Hi guys, so if you want a cheap way of making your Warhammer 40k vehicles, then scratch building is definitely the way to go. So yeah, I've got a little box here of, well, odds and ends, things that are broke, a lot of obviously plastic bottles, sort of recycling stuff, and yeah, anything you kind of think you're going to throw away, yeah, keep it in a box, because you never know what you can make from it. Obviously got loads of the bases, because, well, we all know I don't use any bases, and yeah, there's all kinds of bits and pieces in here. There's a few things I have taken apart, like an old 3D printer I had. It was the filament one, so lots of sort of good old gubbins from that. And yeah, any kind of thing really that you think you might be able to make something with. Obviously, definitely lots of bottles and bottle lids, because obviously loads of them things get used each week. And yeah, so this is part of the 3D printer. Obviously, still got the old Cubic on the front. And yeah, so I'm going to make a tank. So the fun thing with making or scratch building anything is you can have a rough idea of what obviously you want to kind of build, but what the actual outcome is very dependent on what sort of bits and pieces you currently have. So I've only recently started collecting bits again for a bit of scratch building, as obviously when you do sort of collect stuff, it does take up quite a lot of room. And as you guys are always probably aware, I don't have a lot of room where I am. So yeah, I can't keep too much at once. So start with the main sort of build of the body, because obviously then you want to obviously attach bits and pieces to it. And yeah, going for say this front bit, it's definitely off a 3D printer. I think it sort of housed the heating element jobby thingy. Yeah, as we all know, I'm great with technical sort of expressions and what things are actually called. I haven't got a clue. And yeah, obviously a good thing with this is glue it all together with a nice hot glue gun. Obviously it's a nice cheap sort of way of gluing rather than using super glue. Plus obviously I'm making something that's for an orc, and this is where I think scratch building really does work well for orcs, because obviously, well, orcs are the best scratch builders out there, I guess. So yeah, if you're making something for like the Imperial sort of I was going to call them Space Invaders then, yeah, the Space Marines, then yeah, obviously you want to be a lot neater in what you're sort of making. Whereas I say I'm making things for orcs, and yeah, they just chuck things together and hope things sort of work, which obviously they generally do. So yeah, using the hot glue gun, especially in this case, when you use it, it does make it look like sort of weld lines, which is pretty cool. But to say, not if you wanted something to look really nice and neat and perfect, then you would take more time in the cutting up of things, and definitely the gluing things together. But yeah, good old orcs. I think that's the reason why I love orcs, just because you can make things, and the less perfect they look, the more orcish they look. Yeah, so as you can see, obviously scratch building is just a fun process. It really is. You get like the basic shape of whatever it is you're building. So obviously in this case it's a tank, and then yeah, you just get whatever you can find. A lot of it is offering things up and then thinking, well, does that work? Does it not work? But again, with orcs, it doesn't matter if it works or not. Yeah, they seem to sort of build things, and they sort of wish them to work. And yeah, lo and behold, they do sort of work somehow. The power of thought, I guess. So it has been quite a while since my last sort of scratch building project, and I say this every time. I really do have a lot of fun doing these scratch built things. Again, it's just I think it's mainly because I have a rough idea of what I'm trying to achieve. Obviously in this one it's a killer tank, but yeah, you never quite know how it's going to go. Or sometimes I look at my bits box and think, oh yeah, that'll be a wheel, this will be a turret, this will be whatever it is. And then when I come to build it, yeah, things change. Like the wheels on this, originally I was going to use one of them. It's a ketchup bottle lid, and that was going to be used for the turret. But as you can see, I use them for the wheels, and in the end I've used a like a fairy washing up liquid sort of bottle thing. But again, this is why we all have lots of rubbish that we throw away, and a lot of the rubbish is obviously plastic stuff, and this is the stuff that's great for, well, being reused into, well, whatever it is you kind of want it to be. As you can see, this is obviously an army painter nozzle for the little bottles. But yeah, in this case it's going to be used to sort of hold an antenna. The other thing is, I will say though, if you haven't done any sort of scratch building before, when you are building something, you need to get past the fact that obviously it looks like it's made up of, well, of rubbish, because it is, obviously. But yeah, you need to get past how it looks, because you know once you start getting paint on this, especially when you prime it all in whatever colour you're going to prime it. Obviously I'm always priming things in black just because I like that as a good start. Once you prime it, then it all ties in together. But as you can see, it is just a mix of colours, sort of textures, obviously different types of plastic, some thin, some thick chunky ones. Yeah, so when you are doing this bit, it does, well, plus you feel like you're a kid. And so I'm a bit of a big kid, and when I was younger, my favourite programs were Blue Peter and Take Heart. So obviously I'm in the UK, so if you're in the US you may not have heard of those programs, but yeah, so for me that is what I was brought up on back in the well, the 70s and 80s. And yeah, it is a case of building things out of, well, Blue Peter definitely was a case of building things out of rubbish. Primarily Weetabix boxes or cereal boxes was their main sort of thing that they used, and then they would sort of stick bits of rope and other bits onto it. And that's kind of what we're doing here. It really is a case of just keep adding bits. And I think this is a case of, sometimes you say like less is more. When it comes to scratch building, nah, more is more. Yeah, just keep chucking stuff on. Just keep piling it on, adding it on. All these lovely greeblies. It's only a term that I sort of come across when I first sort of started doing the scratch building. Yeah, greeblies. Lovely little fun word. Which obviously just means, well, odds and ends, little bits and pieces. Yeah, just keep chucking them on. So it's probably about a month ago where I had a little accident with my keyboard and I spilt some Coke on it and it broke. And that's the first thing that I kind of put in this box. And as you can see, I am now actually using the keys from that keyboard. And yeah, so I think it's because I sort of, well, ruined and wrecked my keyboard. That's kind of when I started collecting other bits and pieces, yeah, to do a bit of scratch building. And as obviously this is an Ork vehicle, well, you need to have rivets, hundreds of rivets. I don't go quite as mad as I have done before, but yeah, I've got these little dual sort of things, really nice and cheap, only a few quid for like hundreds, and yeah, they make the perfect sort of size for the sort of rivets. So as you can see, I'm gluing them on, and the glue is just running down the side there. But again, because I am making this for an Ork vehicle, things don't need to be neat or precise. And I say, in fact, the less neat and the less precise, yeah, the more Orkish this vehicle looks. And yeah, there we go. So it is just a mix match of all sorts. And at the moment, it does look like, well, more like a kid's toy than, well, than a Warhammer 40k sort of thing. So yeah, I'm going to paint this. Obviously, I'm going to use an undercoat, and I did obviously mention I normally use black, but I want to make this look rusty. So I've got this real feel textured stuff, but there's only a little bit left. So I'm going to use that and a combination of the Army Painter primer to kind of get the result I want. So I actually sort of sprayed them both on sort of almost together, so they kind of bled into each other, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's definitely got like a nice sort of undercoat of, well, of rust, which is kind of what I like the idea of. Again, with Ork vehicles, I always think they should be rusty because they've just, well, they've scavenged around. And yeah, they just got bits of different machinery and put them all together. So I've got Crazy Dave here. He's my sort of test pilot for all vehicles I make. Yeah, I just call him Crazy Dave because he's a test pilot and he's crazy. And his name's Dave. So yeah, there we go. So yeah, it's just a case of cutting out that bit at the top. So he's already painted, so I don't need to put him in to the very end. So I can sort of get everything else painted, and then yeah, just going to plonk him in. I'm going to take the steering wheel away though, because it looks a bit silly because it's a bit obviously high up. And yeah, now on a bit of painting. And surprisingly, I am not going to be doing slap chop painting on this. As I say, this is going to be a sort of a rust bucket. And what I've done before is obviously I've done some stippling before. But yes, I'm just going to go round first and give a little bit of a silver sort of dry brushing. Just so this obviously hits all the high edges, just to make it look like, well, the metal's been sort of worn away, or the paint's been worn away. So it's kind of obviously building this up from, say, the rust to the bits of metal that are sort of showing through, and then doing obviously the paint over the top of all of that. And then obviously adding some washes and then all the rest of it. So yeah, a bit of dry brushing, just going around sort of, say, capturing all the highlights or the edges of all the metal panels. And this, that and the other. Again, obviously, because this is now obviously a great way of turning what was once obviously a whole lot of plasticky bits into hopefully what will look more like it's some metal bits. So yes, again, like I mentioned before, I'm going to do some stippling. Only recently sort of started doing this, and yeah, I love how this sort of comes out. Really nice and simple. So get the colour I want to do, and obviously I love doing red for orcs as well. Red makes things go faster. Then adding lots of water, so it really is a very watered down sort of paint. And then yeah, stippling, or dabbing, whatever you call it really. So no real pattern to this, just sort of going all over the shop. Trying to obviously make sure I don't cover everything, because I want to obviously still have lots of rust coming through. Plus I will go over and do this several more times. And yeah, I love how the effect this gives, because obviously when you do this, so it is very, very watery. So where you sort of go over the same bit twice, then that bit gets a little bit darker. So you just get a nice variation of whatever sort of paint colour you're using here. So some bits are going to be very sort of like light translucent in red. And then by the time I think I did about 3, maybe even 4 coats in the end. And each time, obviously, yeah, it got a bit redder. And I believe the last coat of red I did was like a solid red, without any water, but only did that in a few places, just to break up the colour, as I didn't want the whole thing to to be red. Yeah, going to use a bit of silver, and I'm using I'm going to use the speed paint silver, just because like I've mentioned in previous videos, this silver goes on really, really nice. I kind of loaded my brush up a bit too much there, as you may have noticed. Yeah, I don't know why I picked this brush up, because I actually had a smaller brush to the side. But this is obviously a problem sometimes when I do film what I'm doing. Sometimes I am sort of concentrating more on making sure that whatever I'm filming is in shot, so you can see it. And yeah, say I've actually picked up the wrong brush. But it didn't seem to matter. Yeah, it loaded up with tons of paint and it did it all in one go. But yeah, as I was saying about the metallic army painter sort of paints, they go on so nice and so easy. And say their coverage is really good, because I have got some metallic paints, just like normal paints, and occasionally you have to sort of do like a good 2, maybe 3 coats for it to sort of look, well, like the silver or whatever colour it is. Whereas the army painter speed paint one, yeah, it just goes on really, really nice. So yeah, obviously the next bit of filming, as you can see, I then picked up the smaller brush. It's still quite a large brush, but obviously a lot smaller than the previous one. Again, I just wanted to pick out a few areas that I wanted to be sort of non-painted. And then yeah, obviously those the small tracks that are on the wheels, they get painted in black. And yeah, it's quite a simple little paint job this. I say I really wanted it just to be a rust bucket more than anything. And again, sometimes painting rust effects is one of the easiest things to do, because it doesn't need to look neat, because, well, you want it to look rusty. So yeah, neat is something you definitely don't want to do with it. So it's all coming along nicely. And I say it is looking kind of like rusty, but obviously to make it look even more, well, rusty, yeah, I don't really have many sort of rust effect paints, although you will see one a little bit at the end. But yeah, so basically just going over with a nice sort of a nice wash. Again, this bottle I've got, it is a combination of all kinds of washes that I've got. Yeah, basically I've got quite a few sort of light browns, dark browns, different sort of shades, this, that and the other, but they were all sort of like half full bottles, and some, well, even less than that. So I basically just put them all into this one pot, give them a good old shake. So this is just a combination of all sorts. And yeah, as you can see, I am liberally just putting this on. Every now and then go around with my little cloth, dab it, just because obviously I want it to look very rusty, but I don't want to sort of, well, kill it with a wash, even though that is my normal go-to. Is I do tend to put too much on. Well, not too much for me, because I love things looking really dirty, grimy, and yeah, grimdark is sort of my look. So yeah, but I put plenty on, and then say yeah, just dab a few bits off here. And also when you're dabbing it off, that kind of gives it another, again, more inconsistency. Inconsistency? Is that right? Doesn't sound right. I know what I mean. So yeah, so basically, so it's not sort of like, well, it makes it look more patchy. Maybe we'll go with that word. But yeah, so yeah, I really did put a ton of this on. But thankfully, say I've got a good relationship with Army Painter, and they are sending me out some of their dipping washes. So we're going to get a nice big sort of tub of wash, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, then it's just a case of going around and doing similar to what I did obviously right at the very beginning. I just wanted to sort of pick out a few edges here and there, doing a bit more silver dry brushing, just to make it look like, obviously, well, where the paint's worn on edges, then yeah, you can see the metal underneath. And obviously, to say this is a great way of making this sort of plasticky looking toy into a bit more of a metal looking, well, steel toy, because obviously, after all, we are all big kids playing these kind of board games. Although, to be fair, this probably won't ever be used because I've never played Warhammer 40k. I am definitely a kill team sort of person. Yeah, I love kill team. But yeah, it's just fun having a go at trying something new. I mean, what I probably could have a go at doing is making up an Into the Dark sort of board and walls and all the rest of it with scratch bashing or scratch building. But yeah, I do need to get a bigger bits box because I only actually started collecting a few bits about a month ago, say when I kind of broke my my keyboard. Yeah, rather than throw it away, it was like, oh yeah, these keys can be used for something, and yeah, that's why I then sort of kept them and started well, getting a little box ready to make things. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comments if you've done any scratch building of any kind, whether it be sort of vehicles or terrain. It's always nice to know what you guys get up to. As yeah, it really is a fun way of doing something. This definitely is your Poorhammer sort of version. As we all know, Warhammer bits are quite expensive, so if you can save money and save a bit of the environment as well, so rather than sort of throwing all this plastic away into a landfill, well, you're turning it into something definitely usable. Plus, you can say with these kind of scratch built things, you can take a lot of time and make something really neat and really tidy. Or if you're making something for orcs, all the better, because you can do it really fast, really fun, and yeah, you don't have to be neat in any way. So as I was saying, yeah, last little bit, just going around, just adding a little bit more red. Again, just to get that variation in the paint sort of job on this, where some areas are sort of looking half decent, lots of areas are looking a bit worn, and then obviously then you've got the rust and the sort of metal showing through. So yeah, really enjoyed this little project. Certainly lots of fun. Thanks. I haven't done a scratch build project for, yeah, well, I don't know. I'd have to look through my videos to sort of find out when it was. But yeah, it's certainly been quite some time, because obviously Kill Team has definitely sort of taken a lot of my focus because I just love it. And then one last thing to do, and yeah, that's to add on some stickers or transfers even. So I've got quite a few. Obviously I've got a whole variety of weird and wonderful ones that you guys sent me some ages ago, and I am now sort of starting to use them. So I like using this microsole stuff just because obviously this softens up these transfers, and it just makes them so much easier to apply, because they sort of, well, they're a bit more flexible, a bit more bendy, and yeah, you can sort of curve them round, well, curved things. So it's just a case of dipping them in there for a little bit and then offering them up to, well, wherever it is you're going to put them. But say these ones I've had for quite some time, and I didn't realise this one had actually already, well, it had broken and split before I'd even got to it. Even though I will say I am not the best at putting these on. As you'll soon see, I kind of get the thing stuck to my finger. So what I really should have done here, guys, again, this is one of those bits where don't necessarily do what I do, see what I do. If I make mistakes, great, you learn from it and do it differently. So rather than using my fingers here, I really should have got a brush, because obviously it wouldn't have stuck to the brush half as much as it stuck to my finger. And yes, obviously using this microsole stuff as well, because it does soften these up. So it does make these a bit more easier to sort of tear, rip, and they just almost kind of like disintegrate a little bit. But if you're careful, you can sort of, yeah, manipulate them and get them where you need them. So yeah, I used a few. I didn't go too overboard. I just wanted a few here and there, just to obviously make it look a bit more, well, a bit more orky. And yeah, I think the transfers really do sort of bring something to it that you wouldn't normally get just by sort of the painting. So that's it, kind of almost pretty much done. So time to get old Crazy Dave in his cockpit. And obviously when I have just put the transfers on, they are looking, well, far too bright and nice. So yeah, I've got a little bit of this wash left. I have just ordered some more, or a load of different sort of like rust effect washes, just because I want to start making a few dioramas. And yeah, I like the idea of obviously doing, well, more rust effects. So I have got some more sort of rust paints turning up, hopefully fairly soon. But yeah, obviously putting this on over the transfers and, well, here, there and everywhere, it just makes the transfers look a bit more worn, and yeah, it's much better. Okay, let's see this in all its glory. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and got something out of this. And yeah, don't forget, let me know in the comments if you've done any sort of scratch building of any kind. Yeah, because it is just such a fun thing to do, and I say it does save you a whole lot of money, which is pretty awesome. I just want to say a big shout out and thank you to all my lovely patrons, as well as Chaos Cards, for helping support the channel. It really does mean so much to me, guys. And there's a link down below to a discount code for Chaos Cards and all their miniatures and other bits and pieces. There's another video on the screen, guys. It'd be great if you could click on that, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. See you next time. Bye for now.